Good evening. Here we are with my old colleague, very old Steve Flink on the left side of the screen, and a very beautiful lady on the right side of the screen. She is called Mary Carillo. She has a name that sounds South American, Spanish, I don't know, but she's American. Are you full American?
I am, Ubaldo, but my heart is in Italy, as you know.
Yeah, okay. Well, Steve, he was very, very enthusiastic about the idea to talk with you. And, if his wife is not jealous, we are very happy, all of us.
We are all, you always say, my old friend, Steve Flink. I, too, am very old. So
yeah.
We're all going to be very comfortable in this conversation.
Hey, Ubaldo, I have a question as we start for Mary.
Yeah, right.
I want to know whether you remember your opponents in the 1977 French Open mixed doubles final that you won with John McEnroe.
I know that one of them was my doubles partner for a long time, Flori Mihai, the Romanian.
Right.
And the other one was Ivan Molina.
Ivan Molina.
Wow, nice.
Very amazing. Three lefties on that court. You and John and Molina, all lefties. And Molina had won it with Martina Navratilova 3 years earlier. He'd won the French mix, so it was a good day for you.
It was a good day for us. John hit everything. I jumped out of the way every time a ball came near me. John McEnroe was only 18 years old. It was his, as I like to say, it was his first major title, and it was my last major title. But that's it.
And do you remember a couple of weeks later when you went to Wimbledon and played Kerry Reed out on court 2 and nearly upset her, Mary? That could have changed history.
That could have certainly changed the day. Yeah, Kerry Reed she was a pretty good player. I think she was probably I think she was the 8th seed. I took her to
She was, yeah.
How do you know? Why are you so weird? Why do you know things like that? Why do you know the seed? That's disturbing.
What can I say? I've got to know something in life, and it's these crazy facts about tennis. Luckily for me.
I can tell you that I feel very guilty with towards Mary, because when she won the mixed doubles with John McEnroe, I was there. It was my second Roland Garros, and I didn't watch one single point of that mixed double, because in those days, when a men's final was ending, and there was Vilas who beat Gottfried very badly. I think, he lost, I think he won 6-love, 6-3, 6-love, something like that.
Ubaldo, that's exactly what it was.
Bravo.
What have I got myself into?
Thanks. Well, thanks for the confirmation. We didn't talk about this before, so please don't think that it was built before. It wasn't set up. I want to say, because who is listening to us? In America, Mary Carillo is very, very famous. She has been practically the broadcaster of the year every other year. And through her, I learned the alphabet, because I saw that she's been working for CBS, ESPN, NBC, HBO. I mean, all these letters, I can finally...
What about Tennis Channel? Ubaldo, don't leave out Tennis Channel.
Well, Tennis Channel is not an alphabet, but it's okay.
You're making it sound like I don't know how to hold down a job.
No. Well, I must say that you have been quite a while, let's say, on TV, so, and differently from Steve Flink, who knows everything about tennis but knows nothing about ski, you have been also covering the Winter Olympics in Albertville. And if I mention, while Steve knows Indian Wells, Key Biscayne, Wimbledon, but if I mention to him, I don't know, Albertville, Nagano, he probably doesn't even know what they are. I mean,
that's right.
Lillehammer.
I covered him. I loved him.
Ubaldo, I want to ask Mary something related to all this. So, we joke about Kerry Reed and the French mixed, and then you had a nice career going, but you got started in broadcasting so young. You look back and say, things worked out really well, because if my career had lasted a little longer, if I hadn't had injuries, knee issues, whatever it was, that was sort of meant to be, because you really got started with the broadcasting very young.
I was like in early 20s, and
Right.
and at the time there wasn't a lot of women's tennis on TV. There wasn't even that much men's tennis on, but yeah, a guy who had heard me do some pickup commentary asked me if I wanted to start calling some women's matches, I was also teaching tennis. It wasn't a real job, and then I started covering men's tennis, and then it became something I could lean my back against. But yeah, it came at a good time. Tennis was just, taking off on TV. And I last a lot longer at tournaments when I'm talking about them instead of trying to win matches. A lot longer. Well, let me ask you two, do either one of you think that we're going to see live tennis this season?
Well, I do hope, but I don't really believe it. First of all, if I will see it, I may see it on TV. I don't know if I can go and see it on any stadium. Let's say that you play the US Open. First of all, my wife would probably kill me if I would decide to go to New York when there is still the coronavirus around. So that is also another thing. I haven't missed the US Open since '84. I've done, 160 slams altogether, because 46 Wimbledon in a row since '74, and then 44 from Roland in Roland Garros consecutive, and then US Open since '84, always consecutive too, and then Australian, of course. So the problem is, would I go if they play closed doors and there are only, 50 media? Should I go? What would you advise me, Mary, since you like me?
I'd be very surprised if the US Open played this year. I'd be surprised if they decided to play it without fans. I mean, you can't give out grounds passes, right? You can't have a food court. There'd be all kinds of testing before you went. You couldn't sell out all the seats. Maybe you'd sell every fourth seat. I cannot picture, especially because it's in New York and my hometown has been hit so hard. Yeah. I can't imagine it right now. Can you, Steve?
No, I couldn't. I agree with both of you. There's some rumors that, Mary, that they would try to play the Open maybe out at Indian Wells. I don't see how that happens either.
I'm not feeling that one either. I have heard rumors, and they've cropped up again because New York is still in a state.
And then Roland Garros, of course, they leaped right in and they grabbed those dates in the end of September and October. But I don't think that's realistic either. I think it would be much wiser to try to wait for next year, and hopefully maybe Australia would be able to pull off a no spectators event. But they sound actually keener on that idea than the others, don't you think, Mary? Australia made some noises that they might want to try to do that.
And Australia has been handling their pandemic a lot better than the U.S. and they haven't suffered the way Italy has. But let me ask you to this: we have three of the all-time greats who are frozen in time in 2020. Rafa Nadal has told us in Spanish press that he hasn't picked up a racket since Indian Wells. He told Roger Federer. He says that he doesn't even feel like playing. He misses his family. He can't imagine months going by and then hugging his friends and his opponents. So that's Nadal. Then Djokovic doesn't like the idea of having to take a vaccine because he's so holistic. So he says if he needs to take a vaccine to travel, to play, compete, that's a tough decision for him. We've got Roger Federer, who I'm assuming was going to try to win Wimbledon this year. He almost won it last year, and try to win the Olympics, 2 out of 3 sets on hard courts. He wanted to win. He hasn't won gold yet in singles. So you have all these 3 greats, all-time greats, trying to continue history, and they're frozen right now. That to me is a remarkable situation. And the way all three of them are handling it is also, to me, very compelling.
Well, I don't.
I think that oh, sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think that with Djokovic, I think he would probably reconsider and take the vaccine if he was forced to. Don't you? I think if it came down to that and they were playing and he knew that the others were going to go out there and put themselves on the line, that he would be the only one of the top players not participating, I think he might, with some pain and some remorse, go ahead and take the vaccine.
I'll tell you why I'm not sure, Stephen Ubaldo, because this is a guy, Djokovic is he thinks he can heal his body by himself. Remember, Andre Agassi coached him for a time.
Right.
But practice sessions were so painful, Djokovic had to keep stopping and rubbing out his arm. And then Andre went with him to Canada to a guy who was going to help, a good surgeon who said, yeah, this is not a bad surgery. And Novak said, no, I want to do this with my own body, my own mind. And that's when Andre said, the hell with this. This isn't, I can't work with a guy who's always in pain. Finally, he had his elbow worked on and it healed well. But he said, I read somewhere that he said he cried for a couple of days because he needed surgery. So if that is what this guy is, he thinks that his own body, like he can will his body to heal, then I don't know. I think it'll be a tough call. What do you think about it?
Well, first of all, I think that when you're talking about no vax, you don't have to think only about your body, but also the other bodies.
Yes.
I mean, so he have children. He has children.
Yes.
He has a wife. Okay, so are they all persuaded the same way that Novak is? I mean, would he go abroad from one place to another? With everybody knowing that he could be, who knows, contaminated and contagious. I mean, that would be a great responsibility. I mean, you fly on a plane, you're next to somebody else, and even if they want to keep the distance, you have 2 meters from one seat to another, which I don't believe it will happen, but who knows? Well, I mean, I think it's a bit unreal. I understand what you're saying. I think you're right that he is very persistent when he wants to do something. It's very difficult to make him change his mind. But he has to consider so many things. He's the president of the ATP. He has to think that he's an example for all the players. Can you imagine if everyone would say, okay, since our president, tomorrow no one is taking vax anymore, and the coronavirus is maybe keep killing people everywhere. I mean, we are already. I mean, you understand?
Of course.
Mary, I think that and Ubaldo's got a good point, but I think if Novak came to the decision that he could not take the vaccine, I don't think he would go. I think I think that's what he seems to be saying. That he might be willing to not play, which would be terribly painful given the progress he's made in the last couple of years, and only 3 back of Roger and 2 back of Rafa in the race, and most of us believing that he was very likely to pass them both over these next couple of years.
Plus, Steve and Mary think that he has a team around him. So it's not just himself. I mean, it would be quite a kind of selfish, in a way, decision to decide I'm not going to play until nobody needs any more vax. I mean, what happens? I mean, the coach, the physio, the manager, all the others, they stop working because he is already rich. He doesn't need any more. I mean, it's complicated. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be able to be, because at the end I would be hard towards my people, to my same team.
Right. So you've got Novak, who's genuinely considering not playing, even when they're allowed to again. You've got Roger, who I kind of thought he's maybe done winning majors. Roger's all of a sudden looking really good, even though he's crowding 40. And you got Nadal, the only part of Rafa Nadal that has never been injured. The only part you never doubted was his heart. And now it seems his heart is broken over all of this. He's not even playing. And it sounds like he's considering starting his family. So isn't it something how tennis history will be affected in a big way, I think, by the coronavirus?
Yeah, I think so. Right. I think so too. I think it's a big thing. And I must say that my compatriot, Andrea Gaudenzi, couldn't be less lucky than he has been, because I mean, he took this job and everything happened. I mean, and he cannot control it. Now, one thing I would like to ask you, since you have been also in the WTA board years ago, do you think about what Federer said about the chance to WTA and ATP merge? I was particularly impressed about a comment made by Billie Jean King when she said, I was always in favor of that. If we had done it in 1970s, maybe today we would be the owner of the slams, which is a strong quote. I mean, strong affirmation. Can you say that? Yes. Because, you know, that means, okay, that in a way, Billie Jean King would have been happy if ATP and WTA were owning the slams, and bye-bye to the ITF.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. I thought I actually thought Roger's tweet was disingenuous, you know. Am I the only one who thinks this is a good?
Well,
I mean,
that is fishing. Is like fishing for compliments.
Yeah, it was fun, right? I mean, Billy has wanted this for 50 years, and as Billy also said in a combination of tweets, forming the Women's Tennis Association separate from the men was always Plan B. When tennis went pro, Billie Jean just assumed that everyone would be together. She assumed that that's what was going to happen. The guys didn't want her. And there's still guys who don't understand the benefits of the WTA and the ATP merging. So I was hoping you could tell me about Gaudenzi. I mean, I know he's been talking to Steve Simon, who's the head of the WTA. I know they've been having real meetings, earnest meetings. And finally, the good news coming out, I heard this weekend, Steve, that finally the women are going to dump that whole designation of a premier mandatory event, a mandatory event. They're going to go to the men, like the Masters 1000. This is a 1,000. It's worth 1,000 points. It's worth 500 points. It's worth. So thank God that nonsense is over. But can they really all pull together? It reminds me, there are so many different entities. It reminds me of The Godfather. If I can go to your people, Ubaldo, you know, the 5 families, you know, everyone was fighting for power. The Corleones, the Tattaris, the Straccis, the Barzinis. Nobody wanted to give up their turf, right? Now we have 7 families of tennis, right? And so if you bring them together, if you develop a council, if you have a commissioner, do the 4 majors, do they get 4 votes in the meeting, or do they get 1 collective vote? It's stuff like that that kind of blows me away when I think about, wow, how are they going to, if they get together, who gets the muscle? Who gets the real power?
That's the issue. That's the crucial issue. And then you mentioned Steve Simon and Gaudenzi. How does that play out? How do the 2 leaders of the respective associations now, how do they divide their power? It'll be very tricky.
Tell me about Gaudenzi. Is he a very forward-thinking guy, Ubaldo? Tell me how. Is he a leader, this guy? Or I know he's smart, but is he a unifier, a leader?
He's smart, and he has been always a leader in the Italian tennis when he was a player. He practically was the captain of the Davis Cup team. The other players, when Gaudenzi and Sanguinetti and Pozzi, they beat the United States in Milwaukee, and they went to the final in '98 of the Davis Cup. Gaudenzi was by far the leader of the group, and also Gaudenzi was strong enough to impose his opinions at the time when the captain of the Davis Cup team was Adriano Panatta. And Panatta it was not only the captain of the team, but he was also somehow promoting a Davis Cup match which was played in Naples against Czech Republic. And Gaudenzi was furious about the idea because he thought that Panatta was making money with the organization of the Davis Cup event, and the players were not. So in Italy, it was called the money, the battle of the money. And Gaudenzi was a trade union leader at that time. So, and he also, Mary, suggested when we played the finals in Milan, since the players were not paid enough, he said, let us run the event. We run the event and we participate of the eventual incomings. And of course, the federation was against it. But so what I say is that he knows what he wants. Then, as you say, there are so many powers, conflicting powers, including the four slams. They are all following their own path. The Australian are doing their business, the ATP Cup, the Labour Cup, and so on. The Americans are with the USTA, the Labour Cup. The French, who were once, because of Philippe Chatrier, probably the most powerful group, they became the weakest group. That's why they had to decide immediately to put the French flag on the end of September and pick up a date. So Gaudenzi, whatever he cannot do miracles, I'm afraid.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Steve?
Well, I missed the end of your comment, Ubaldo.
Ubaldo is trying to explain how difficult this. I mean, do you think that all these people can actually come together and unify and create a real mixed, a real union? Do you see that happening, Steve? You've been around.
I don't. I mean, I do think there could be greater cooperation between the WTA and the ATP. I could see some improvement, but a full-scale sort of unification, I don't see it given the nature of tennis history.
But to Ubaldo's point, the four majors are separate entities.
Right.
It's not like they're going to agree on everything.
No, they're not. They're not. That's a big control base for them to have all the slams. So these are nice dreams, but whether they come to reality, I don't know.
The seven families.
7 families, and each one with a different tiebreaker, each one with a different format. I mean, that's incredible. Sometimes they say they do it because you have the antitrust law that you have to change some rules, because if not, someone could be left out and all these kind of things. But the reality is that each slam wants to do his own path.
And we saw that with Roland Garros claiming those dates. That was a perfect example.
Well, not only. If you think that when Fognini was expelled from the US Open, and they wanted to put a sanction on that, then all the other slams said, oh, that's something related to the US Open. We have nothing to do with that. I mean, we don't want to, to share a sanction that let's say Fognini at that time was not a top 10. And so like he became after he won Monte Carlo. But if, let's say, something would happen to a top of the, or to one of the top 3-4 guys, and one of them would be by some, I don't know, miracle, sanctioned, all the others would never accept that he is disqualified from their slams because he didn't behave well in one of the others. They're not united.
No, Ubaldo, we saw that when Serena got in trouble at the US Open. Remember, against Kim Clijsters, she got fined and she was supposed to be suspended. The Australian Open wanted her the next year, and she
sure
refused.
Yeah,
of course. Of course. It's too much money. I mean, it's we cannot. We are. I mean, I'm not shocked about the fact that money is becoming the leader, the boss of all situations. It's quite normal. More, you may like it. You may be more romantic. I am more romantic because I'm an Italian. You know.
It's the law.
So I have to be romantic, but money is leading everything. So that's why to combine 7 different forces, positions. You know, the top guys, they may save their jobs. Well, what about the middle? The middle would disappear if you know the middle positions. It would be even worse. You were talking about Gaudenzi and Simon, who is going to be up there, and that is one thing. But that, who knows? Maybe if you give, you can find a solution, economical solution, maybe to, you know, maybe Simon is happy enough. He has been there for a few years. He could be even accept the idea that. He would leave more power to Gaudenzi. But all the middle position, those ones would disappear. I mean, you cannot keep the management staff of ATP, of ITF, of WTA. It's impossible.
Yes, there'll be a lot of redundancy. And then yeah, exactly right.
That's it.
Anyway, we're not doing a very good job of solving the problems of the game. We're trying, though.
We're stating the problems. We have no answers. What we're trying to do is explain just how thorny it is. I mean, that was the problem with tennis. It just kept cobbling itself together, right? People, you know, it was just so the structure, the architecture of it was never solid to begin with, right? And it.
Yeah. Well, then, you know, I don't know what you think about what is the situation about the tennis clubs. But I mean, in Italy, they are all shut down. Okay, they are all locked. They say tennis could be easier, let's say, than a team sports because it's not a contact sport. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you have a tennis club, what do? You have to check the people when they get in, decide if they can go to the lockers or not. A lot of rules. You can play with your own balls, but not with the other. You have to pick up the balls with a special instrument. I mean, who will take the responsibility? Let's say you are the president of a tennis club, and tomorrow you open your club. People come in. And some of them, either those workers who work for you, or the players, some get ill and maybe die. What happens? The lawyer would immediately sue the club, sue the president, sue the council, the board. Disaster. So what do? So it's not true that, and then they say, oh, you cannot play doubles. You cannot play volley because you get too close to the other one on the other side of the net. I mean, it's...
the doubles, Mary, I saw a report earlier, I think out of Miami, one of the public parks, they're doing some limited amount of, they're letting people play tennis, but only singles to get to Ubaldo's point, no doubles.
Right, and we have our governor, the governor of Florida is a moron, okay?
Yes, he is.
He's an idiot. Yes. And he's sucking up to President Trump. And so he wants to open up the golf courses. He wants to open up the parks. He wants to open up the beaches. I mean, it's dangerous. It drives me a little crazy. Right now, where I live in Naples, Florida, not Italy. All the nets are down at all the clubs.
Bad luck. You cannot have a good pizza.
It's not like in Naples. Not like in your Naples, Ubaldo. That's true.
Okay. Correct.
But I mean, our beaches people are still trying to sneak into the beaches, and the police have to, you know, patrol. And I mean, what's wrong with these people? They're crazy. Why are you taking a risk? You know, why don't you wait till it's safe? So in those ways, I mean, Novak isn't wrong. His worldview is, he's kind of woo-woo, compared to a lot of the rest of us. But his basic thinking is, I want my family and I want us all to be safe. And that, to me, is also Nadal's biggest concern. He misses being a part of this spinning planet. He wants to get back to that before anything.
Well, I can, even to practice is not easy, because, for instance, today I was told that Andrei Medvedev rented a house in south of France with a tennis court.
Yeah.
And he can afford it, and probably in a nice place, I guess. I don't know if he has overlooking the sea and the beach, but anyway, he can practice. But what if you have a tennis club and you have 10 tennis courts?
Mm-hmm.
How can you check that on court number 10 someone is following all the rules? Picking up no towels of the other one, serve, just throwing the ball without touching the ball with the hand. You have to put it on the frame, lift it up, and then hit the serve. I mean, which takes some quality, yeah, some ability. Anyway, how can you check that on court number 10 they are respecting the rules? And then number 7, what do you have? One policeman or one inspector for each court? When you're
when you're 70, I have to interrupt for just 1 second. I've got a dog emergency here. I'll be right back.
No, that is a toilet break. That is a toilet break. Oh, okay, okay.
Bulldog has got to go out. I'll be right back.
Okay. I thought it was a toilet break by Steve. At a certain age it happens.
No, you're right about. You can't. How do you govern these people? How can you trust that they're smart enough to follow the rules that have to be followed? A lot of the players seem to be practicing on private courts. The ones who want to practice.
Yeah.
I mean, Jimmy Arias runs the IMG Academy, what used to be Bollettieri's, and I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I mean, they're allowed kids to play maybe 2 hours a day. I mean, you have to, and then the rest of the time they're off the courts. They're not near each other. I think they stag every other court, whatever. I mean, you have to accept the reality of this moment. Where I live right now, in Florida, we have hurricanes and we lose electricity, no internet, no TV, no air conditioning. You feel the trauma of the moment. It's beautiful outside in Naples right now. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful day. So people aren't taking it seriously. And also the weather's getting better in New York. So people want to be outside. They were lucky. They had kind of a rough winter. It was raining a lot. It was cold. But now it's getting pretty out. And that's going to also be a big problem. People want to be outside. They're tired of being outside.
I haven't. So you are in Naples. You're not in New York. I thought you were in New York before.
No, I have a place in New York. My parents are in New York as well. But no, I'm in Naples. And as I said, the reason people are flouting the laws are because it looks fine. That's the problem.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that it's difficult.
With some leadership, though, Mary, you mentioned the governor. With some good leadership, I think that everybody would be in a lot better shape and might be willing to make the sacrifices that are so crucial right now.
Exactly.
Look, we have always been very critical and making a lot of fun about our politicians. But I must say that when I look to the American, we are doing some critic. I mean, we may sound ironical, but we also make some fun also of Europe's. So I don't see any country doing really well in terms of politics, because if I remember what Boris Johnson was saying in Great Britain before he got caught by coronavirus, if I remember what I heard Macron saying in France about opening the school, come on, it's just a fever, it's just nothing. I mean, it's a flu or things like that. I mean, all politicians I don't know which country they're good.
I say New Zealand, and it's I'm the New Zealand.
Oh yeah.
Who runs New Zealand? there was a shooting, a terrible mass shooting, and she got rid of all of the guns. You know, there was a volcano. Remember, she handled it well. This woman is, and obviously it's a small country, and it's not as she doesn't have as many problems to deal with. But can I just say, for my gender, I think women. I wish there were more women in power who understand better, what the important things are. I think I nominate New Zealand as the best run country politically.
Yeah, maybe you're right. First of all, I love New Zealand because I was there many times, especially following America's Cup. Because while America's Cup is a sailing competition, Steve, my old friend, I just tell you,
I'm aware that they sail. A little bit of credit, Ubaldo. I do that much.
You must have learned of not only Pete Sampras. There is also Dennis Conner. People like that. Paul Kayard. Anyway, so I was in New Zealand. I love New Zealand, but New Zealand has a population of 4 million people, and is big as Italy. And Italy has almost 70 million. So to run 4 million, to run 70 million is a different.
And also, it has more sheep than people. I understand. I'm just saying.
Yeah. But you're right.
We need leadership. We need leadership in politics. We need leadership in tennis.
No, I do agree. But let's say, if you were a woman or man, being leader in China or in India, where they have 1,300,000,000 people, so is completely different. I mean, if you've been in India, and I was last year in Rajasthan, thanks also to Vijay Amitraj, who gave me some good instructions. Well, it's tough. It's tough to solve the problem of population like the Indian or the Chinese. I would rather be in New Zealand for sure as a politician.
Yes. Even
as a man.
Okay, fair
enough. Anyway, I still have the feeling that something could happen in Europe earlier than in America. Because now it seems a long time that coronavirus has stepped in, but we are in April and something is decreasing. Okay, we are all locked down. I haven't been out in the last 40 days. I live in Florence. I'm lucky. I have a nice garden. I can play ping pong. It's the only sport I can practice. But I believe that in September, October, the clay season has a chance.
Really?
I'm not sure. Of course, nobody knows. But everywhere, the deaths are decreasing. For instance, in south of Italy, which normally is the worst place when you want to have some kind of order, because in the south of Italy, they would do everything to disobey to any instructions. Still, in Italy, in Sicily, there is almost no coronavirus. In Sardinia, not at all. Sardinia, there had 4 people that died in the last month and a half.
Why is that? Is the virus afraid?
Well, because we start. Okay, I disagree with most things that your President Trump says, but I agree with him when he says that China didn't say immediately what was going through in the right time. So we all found out much later. And so the reaction that Italy had was, we started too late, and the virus came especially in the north, because the north is where there are more people traveling from one country to another. there are more industries, there is more work, more jobs, more people driving cars, meeting each other, more nightclubs, more discotheques, more everything, you know. I mean, every bars, restaurants. So it was easier to get caught with the coronavirus in Lombardy, next to Milano, to Piedmont, Veneto. So when they started to have those big, deaths and contagious people, they started to lock down everything else. So, okay, Emilia-Romagna, which is next to Lombardy, up in the north, they also had problems, the biggest cities. But if you come down and down and down, for instance, Lazio and Roma, they had some, but not so many. I mean, Lombardy alone has more than half of all the people who died and who have been contagious. How do you say? I don't know. In the rest of Italy. So let's say we have many. There are many people who are critical towards the government because we are afraid for the economy. Because a lot of companies will get big troubles. They may disappear forever.
Yes.
But they are strict enough, and I think health comes earlier than and sooner than the economy. That's my. I think the politicians in this case didn't have an easy task. They were the first one to be, in a way, after China. We were the first, Italy, to be caught by this virus. And it wasn't easy to find how to deal with it.
But Ubaldo, my understanding is that it was a big soccer game in that one, but the Atalanta,
yeah,
right? It was
Atalanta.
a big soccer game. 10,000 people got the virus in that soccer game. And I think it was between Italy and Spain, which is why those
Correct.
two countries got hit so hard. Because
Valencia.
food, right?
That's,
so then that is the danger of sporting events in the time of a virus.
But also,
quickly.
There's the resurgence too, Mary. That's what I'm concerned about. Ubaldo, Dr. Fauci, who I know you respect, Ubaldo, he keeps saying that he's convinced we'll have a resurgence in the fall. So that's another problem with this clay court European notion, is that it could come back and a lot of people could get very sick.
And Ubaldo, I remember after Roland Garros went after that date in September. Soon after, there was a report about the Italian Open, and it said, we are also going to have our event this year. It may not be in Rome, and it may not be on clay. Could that possibly be?
Well, that is for economical reasons, because the president of the Italian Federation knows that out of 58 millions of turnover of the Italian tennis, 38 are produced by the Italian Open. So if the Italian Open are not there, he would lose, okay, there would not be many expenses, but he would lose, I think, at least 20 millions of, money. 20 millions would disappear. So he would play anywhere. In Torino, he's hoping to play maybe in Torino date if the ATP finals would not be played in London, and then he is ready to go and pick up the ATP finals. But the ATP finals will not have any chance to be played if there are no points, no tournaments before, because I mean, you need to have 8 players there. And how do they build up the rankings if there is no tennis before? So it's all in the clouds. But I understand that they really would do anything possible to play either in the week before Roland Garros or even the week after, if Roland Garros will ever be played. I spoke with Gaudenzi 1 month ago almost, And he said, in principle, he was a bit against the regional tournaments, because I said, look, if you every time you go from Europe to America, from America to Europe, you have to stay 2 weeks in quarantine. There is no way you can go ahead. So either you decide, like in golf, you have the American circuit, you have the Asiatic circuit, the Australia, I don't know, South Asia Pacific, and you have the European Volvo Order of Merit or whatever it's called. We are talking about golf, Steve. It's another sport. You follow? Can you follow? Okay, sorry about that.
Every single word of it, I'm following.
Okay. Anyway, so I think at the end, instead, there could be an option. The fact that they could play just Europeans in Europe and Americans. And your problem is that you have only 8 Americans in the top 100. So you don't have many stars. Europe could survive with the players we have. If you think the last year, the ATP finals, they were 8 European players. 8 out of 8. When Nishikori dropped out, that was it. Yeah. So in Europe, in a way, you could try to find the solution to the problem of the quarantine. You cannot do it, going back and forth in America and overseas.
That's right.
That's why I cannot come to visit Mary if she doesn't invite me to stay there for 15 days. I cannot come for just 2 days.
Oh, man.
So it's like fish. It's like fish after a while, After 3 days, the fish smells. So you cannot be guest of anybody for more than 3 days without smelling.
Correct. So,
anyway.
What will this do to our sport, guys? How well will tennis survive? I mean, tournaments are going to drop away. Players who aren't ranked highly enough are going to quit. I mean, how devastating, or do you anticipate that it's going to be healthy by next year?
Well, I think if it's healthy next year, I think it could be, Mary. My biggest concern is if depending on when the back end of this came or the next phase. And in other words, if we started back and everybody was excited and we started with Australia, let's just say this year's a wipeout. We start with Australia. Australia is terrific, just as it was this past year. And they play on up till Indian Wells, and suddenly we have to stop again there's another period of, say, 6 months. 6 months, let's say. And they're out again. I don't think I think would be very hard to survive.
No, but the wax, whether Djokovic takes it or not, the wax, I believe in January it will be there. I'm almost sure, because there are so many research, so much money also involved by different pharmaceutical groups, doctors, virologists, and all these things, that I'm positive about the fact that some kind of wax will come out, and that should be the end of 90% of the problem, I think.
So, Mary, what do you kind of heard Ubaldo and I weigh in a little here. You give us your thought. How are you projecting this? Let's just say we don't play this year. What does that do to the game for 2021? And how many tournaments go by the wayside, and how many players no longer compete?
I have to assume, you guys correct me, my sense of things is that the 4 majors are always healthy. Every year they do well. And then you've got the mixed events like Indian Wells and Miami and Cincinnati, Madrid. You assume they're healthy, right? Healthy tournaments. But honestly, are there more than about 10 that are going to have a nice, profitable tournament year after year? I don't think there are that many that necessarily, I think a lot of tournaments are right on the edge, depending on, tennis isn't it's not like the NFL. Ubaldo, I don't know enough about soccer TV rights, but the NFL, the NBA, there are three revenue streams in sports, right? TV rights are big in the NFL and the NBA, not as big in baseball, much less in tennis. Okay. So then you have your sponsorships, and that's a big deal in the NFL. In the NBA, the lot of all this clothing and all kinds of merchandise. And then attendance is number three. Okay. So the big sports, and Ubaldo, I'm guessing soccer is one of those sports in Europe, and certainly in Italy, where those three things are met. Okay. In tennis, that's not, I just don't think there are a lot of tournaments that meet that criteria year after year, week after week. And that's my concern.
Well,
I share those concerns, and I think I just fear that we don't have another long delay in the world of sports, you know, that compares to this year, where somewhere in the middle of next year we're hit again, or even in the early part of the year. That would be hard to survive.
What do you think about it?
Well, I understand that the players have to protect their tournaments as much as they can, because of course more tournaments there are, the more money there is for most players. At the same time, this situation could lead to some kind of format that would reply a little bit the Formula One competition in car racing. Another sport, Steve, car racing, Formula One.
That is the subject of another discussion. Okay. Don't try to educate me on that right now.
Just a lot of left turns, Steve.
No, so what I'm saying, you know, Formula One has one big race every month. Yeah. And at the beginning of the year, you know that there will be that, and that. And those are the main moments of that sport. Everyone knows when they are.
Right.
They may change sometimes.
It's like majors. It's pillars.
Pillars. Yeah. Okay. Tennis has 4 pillars, the 4 slams.
Correct.
The calendar has always been a little, I don't know, you know, Roland Garros, but bad calendar. I mean, it's never been very, very well placed, because you had always to respect the tradition, the position, and you couldn't change really much.
Correct.
Now you would have a chance. For instance, there is no reason today that Canadian Open and Cincinnati, they have to be back to back, or Madrid and Rome. Can't you find a way to put some little distance between this, so that you have the 4 slams in those months, that everybody, even those who don't know anything about tennis, they have an idea that the Australian Open is in January. The Wimbledon is end of June, 1st of July, beginning of July, you know it. Okay, you should try to build a calendar where also, okay, Monte Carlo is in April, Madrid is in May, Rome will be, I don't know when, and you must find this way, and that would help to sell the product, because Gaudenzi is saying we are the 5th sport in the world in terms of numbers of fans, and what we get in TV rights is 1.7% in terms of selling TV rights. And that is because the product is completely inaccessible. I mean, it's difficult to understand. You have to buy the streaming of different, you have to apply for pay inscriptions for, I don't know, this TV for WTA, this one for the ATP, the other one for the US Open, the other, it's a mess.
It's incoherent.
And speaking of incoherence, imagine that what nobody talked about with the French Open, Ubaldo, is that for them to jump in and grab late September, early October, with the players having 1 week to recover from the US Open, if the US Open is played, is utter insanity. And you can't have the players playing 2 Grand Slam events, 4 weeks of Grand Slam.
Yeah, you're right.
4 out of 5 weeks.
You're right, but this is an emergency situation, so you don't
It is,
have
but
to
the
stick.
players are going to get, there's going to be injuries. And let's just say Djokovic and Nadal, if in the unlikely event the US Open is played, let's say they played a 5-set US Open final. They're supposed to step out onto the clay at Roland Garros a week later. That's just not fair to the top guys.
No, yes, but I'm more concerned about those who are not top guys. I mean, there are 256 players who would get some money both in 2 slams, and if that is the only solution, possible solution, I'm sure that those one who would lose the first round or the second round would be very happy to have a chance to play 2 slams.
Right. But
So, okay, I'm sorry for Nadal or Djokovic or whoever. If they cannot play 2 slams in a row, we can survive. I mean, the other ones cannot survive.
What you just said before is really making me think, Ubaldo, if we can unify all these the 7 families, if we can get them in a big boardroom with a big, large, empty calendar, okay?
Yeah.
And explain to them, all right, so we have the 4 pillars, we have the 4 majors, we'll place them where they belong. Then we have to go by surface, so we have to account for surfaces and make that part coherent. And then we, just because of the climate, the current climate, and perhaps the resurgence of something like a coronavirus, you divide the calendar in a way that makes sense, from Europe to Australia to the US. You spend quite a bit of time. And I have to tell you that especially for the American players back, like when Andre Agassi was playing, before there was FaceTime, before there were, Skyping, and a lot of American players hated being in Europe from the French Open to Wimbledon. So they would go home, they would get home and then come back. And there's really, and especially now because so many of them travel with teams, there's no reason not to stay on one continent for a sustained period of time, just because it would make more sense and it's healthier. So that, honestly, the hell with this year, because I'm considering this pretty much a wash. In the years to come, if you can clean the calendar, start over again, and think in all those sensible, healthy ways, then you're thinking long term.
Yeah,
that might require a commissioner. It gets back to something you said earlier, Mary. I mean, I've always dreamed. I don't think that it's very likely ever to happen, but the commissioner would be looking at the larger picture. He'd be 30,000 feet up in the air, saying, "This is what we're going to do in the best interest of tennis," and it wouldn't come down to squabbles between the ATP and the WTA and the ITF and all the rest. That's the kind of thinking we need.
I don't think if that were true, if we could pick somebody, say you're the commish, and you have no agendas, then I think I would prefer a council, an international council, smart people,
Similar to what we had. What do you mean? Like we had in the old days with the men's tennis council?
Yeah, but this would be for everybody.
Right.
See, this would be men, women, ITF. Right. Grand Slams, WTA.
Yeah.
The idea that there is one commissioner, one person out there who can
like a dictator. No, we don't.
No,
we had some dictators already in Italy and somewhere else. We don't need them anymore.
I think that's true.
But 12, I mean, the ideal would be, as you say, clean calendar. There will be less tournaments because of the coronavirus. Let's take advantage of the bad. Let's come out of the evil, trying to do good things. And to have one big tournament every month, from January till the end, especially now that in a way Davis Cup and ATP Cup are more or less in 1 week or 10 days or 2 weeks. So that's is something that in a way it helps, okay? Even if they are still fighting and who knows who will win and so on. But that is, okay, six tournaments or 7 big Master 1000 and the 4 Slam. That's it. And then all the others are less. It's not that they are not important, but they follow it. I don't see why in America you must have February and March Indian Wells and Miami, and then in August again you start again with America. I mean, try to arrange the calendar in a way that is more sensible so also to avoid to the players to go back and forth 10,000 times to airplanes. Now the players are not one individual. They are teams of 5, 6, 7 people who move all the time back and forth. It's not. I mean, I think it's difficult. But this would be the way to come out of this difficult situation.
So anyway, maybe Steve, instead of like one commissioner,
yes,
we have again. I go back to the Godfather. We have all these families, and then you need consiglieris. You need
right. No, I hear
you. We need like a fistful of consiglieris who can judge what's right, what's fair, what's safe. Yeah.
Well, for instance,
I would find that appealing too, just because we need the higher authority, whether it's one individual or the group or the council. I can't even say that word. we can have them as well, but I just think that maybe out of this crisis can come opportunities if the powers that be would be willing to allow it.
Right.
Right. Listen, I think that Mary has enough of you, Steve. I see Mary getting tired. I said, this guy on my right side is bothering me, and it's enough. This old, she would prefer much more a young, person next to him. I mean, not you.
I'm right behind you guys. I got to tell you. Right behind
she survived us both. She survived us both. She's to be commended for it.
I was able to. She was brave enough to come behind my motorbike in Wimbledon. I took her around with the All England Club, and you would have never been so brave.
I sat and we did a YouTube from right outside the grounds of Wimbledon.
I remember that.
Yes, you did a YouTube, but I had to stack the motorbike with 5 people because you were afraid to fall one side or the other. I mean, you weren't that brave, to be honest. But anyway,
we started on a Vespa, okay?
With a Vespa. And you know, Mary, that I drove John McEnroe in Florence. He was quite frightened at the beginning, and I took him around Florence, and he wanted to buy jewels for the birthday of Tatum O'Neill, his first wife. And so I had to take him around Florence, and he was scared, but then he enjoyed. So, I mean, while Stevie would never try. I mean, so he would never try. Anyway, listen. Thanks a lot, Mary. You've been, as usual, very, very nice. I'm glad I had the chance to talk to you. Sometimes we had some problems with the connection, but we will survive. And, well, what can I wish you? To start doing your job very soon, to be to win another what is called the broadcaster of the year. I mean, you can do it again and again. I don't know if you are Hall of Famer like Steve, that you can see on the left side of his room that is showing, that, I have always to remember to everyone who's listened to us that he's a Hall of Famer.
That was a funny thing, Mary. I said to them, it was in the exhibit, what's behind me. And I said to them, what happens to that? And they said, no, well, normally they have to discard it. I said, so they shipped it to me,
Wow, nice.
I'm glad to have it.
Fresh from the dumpster.
Okay. Okay, so listen, thanks a lot, really. I hope you will be available once again. I don't know, I want to give you some rest because you need it after being next to Steve for all this long hour. But
I like the way Ubaldo excludes himself, Mary. Do you notice that?
I haven't noticed that, but I would love to talk to you two again. And until that happens, Aguri, stay healthy.
Stay healthy and safe home. Safe home. Don't go out too early because it would be stupid. Okay.
Steve's a party animal. That won't be easy.
Okay. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.